Welcome to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. The HiT cast offers a weekly look at Hollywood from a conservative point of view. Sick of media bias infecting Hollywood headlines? Tired of stars insulting your views? HiT has your back. Now, here's your host, Christian Toto.
Welcome to episode 65 of the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. This week we're speaking with Jon Erwin, the co-director of the new faith-based drama I Can Only Imagine. It's a perfect example of how the faith-based genre's growth has really gotten exciting. Yes, you may tear up a time or two. This week's show is sponsored by WeNeedMore.org, an online petition asking Marvel Studios to add the X-Men and the Fantastic Four into the next Avengers film. Before I interview with Jon, though, I wanted to address the insanity surrounding a new film, A Wrinkle in Time. Now, the film itself is not a classic by any stretch. I don't think it'll be considered such down the road either. It's kind of like a well-intentioned mess, and that's okay. I've seen worse films for sure. But there's something else in play, actually multiple things. The Hollywood Reporter recently argued that the film didn't have to be good, and you put scare quotes around good, and how dare people say that quality matters with a movie like this. It's about diversity. This think piece, and I'm using that term loosely, is a disaster. And if you don't believe me, read the comments section on the article. It's a riot. Meanwhile, over at the Daily Beast, they've chimed in saying that DuVernay, the director of the film, is the future of the superhero genre. Here's a quote. Why directors like A Wrinkle in Time's Helmer and not some unknown white guy, for once, present the clearest, most engaging path forward in a time of superhero fatigue. Superhero fatigue? Did they see the box office for Black Panther? Did they know what the estimations are for Avengers Infinity War? What planet is this writer on? The rest of the article is even dumber than that, trust me. Meanwhile, director Ava DuVernay herself warned about the film's reaction before it actually came out. Here's a quote from her saying that maybe some members of the audience won't be ready for A Wrinkle in Time. There's a darkness in the world, and the only one who could stop it is smash cut to a black girl. I don't know if people are going to feel like that. I feel like that. What? I'm pretty sure that the black girl in the film, who's played adorably by Storm Reed, isn't the first black protagonist we've seen on screen. I can't even imagine what people are thinking these days. This isn't 1952. Now, it isn't just Hollywood itself kind of doing all this virtue signaling about diversity. Today's reporters are all in, like some of the things I just mentioned, grading movies with diverse casts on a curve. Heck, Richard Roeper said that the critics behind facing Ghostbusters did just that. They wanted it to succeed so badly that they, hey, maybe it wasn't a great movie, but we're going to give it a thumbs up anyway. That's wrong. Today's media are acting like cheerleaders for projects like this. You could just see what's happening now. DuVernay just got a new project. It's a new DC Comics potential franchise. Well, good for her. I think she's a pretty talented director. Let's see what she does with the property. But boy, we don't have to kind of wave our pom-poms in the air. What's going on? Now, here's the ugly truth. The media today is scaring away potential customers with these antics. And much worse, you're setting the diversity movement up for failure. If quality isn't job number one, and some people are arguing that with the Wrinkle in Time movie, well, then audiences are going to tire of all these woke projects. Now, we all want Hollywood to embrace people of all colors and faiths better than they've done in recent years. You just got to look at all those studies saying how many directors are white, how many directors are female, how many directors are people of color. Those numbers are often very, very small. But picking up the pom-poms to cheer on diversity and ignoring quality, ignoring the bottom line, that's the wrong approach.
You're listening to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment.
And now here's the celebrity tweet of the week. This week's winner is Christopher Titus. He's the comedian who's really successfully mined a terrible childhood for decades. By the same token, he's a terrible pundit. Of course, he's leaning left and doesn't exactly know what the heck he's talking about. Case in point? Well, here's his rant about the recent gun protests and making a really clumsy analogy. Regarding this new diversion, if we are willing to put as many restrictions and laws on guns as abortions, I'll shut up. If we are willing to regulate gun manufacturers like we do clinics, I'll shut up. No federal money on abortions? No gun money used in elections? Are you in? Where does one even begin with the level of dumbassery we're seeing here? My hit tip of the week is I, Tonya. Yes, the movie gets a lot of attention because Allison Janney won the Best Supporting Actress Oscar for her role in the film. She's great, no question, but that's not the main reason to catch this movie, which is available now on home video. It's the story itself. It's a clever mix of docu-style footage, sly comedy, and some really great performances. You know, Margot Robbie is stunning. She might be the most attractive actress in Hollywood today. Just aesthetically speaking, that's just my choice. But she's also a terrific talent, and she's got good range, too. Here she brings a real complexity to wind up in a one-note role. The lower middle-class girl trying to skate her way into fame and fortune and acceptance. Of course, we're talking about Tonya Harding. The film offers plenty of other awards, too, including some really laugh-out-loud moments, particularly late in the film when that kneecapping plan is really getting going. There is just some very funny stuff here, but it doesn't feel like it's changing gears or getting away from the main project. It's all woven together quite effectively. Now, on the downside, I've read that some of the people who covered the Tonya Harding affair with Nancy Kerrigan, the kneecapping incident, they said that it's really too kind to Tonya Harding, that she was much more complicit in that scheme than she lets on, and that the movie lets on. But overall, taken as itself, I, Tonya is a really enjoyable film, one of the most enjoyable experiences I had last year watching a movie. Do yourself a favor and check it out right now.
Don't touch that dial. You're listening to my daddy's podcast.
Now, let's get to my chat with Jon Erwin. Jon, along with his brother Andy, are helping the Christian movie genre really push past preconceived notions about what's good and what's bad. They're making a difference. They directed the underrated comedy Mom's Night Out, and their latest film is their best to date. I Can Only Imagine is the emotional story behind the biggest Christian song of all time, and the only one that ever went double platinum in sales. It's also about how the bond between a troubled father and son helped fuel that staggering success. Jon got his start in a very unconventional way, which he discusses with plenty of humor here. He's also a serious force in Hollywood for making sharp, faith-friendly movies that can compete with mainstream fare. Here's my chat with Jon Erwin. Welcome to the show. You know, a movie like I Can Only Imagine, it seems like a natural fit for the big screen, but I know there's always complications and obstacles that get in the way of any movie. Can you talk about,
of course,
were there unique obstacles that kind of maybe prevented you from going right away, or was this a more smooth production? How would you kind of describe the
well, I mean, all movies are difficult. No movie wants to get made, by itself, and you have to kind of wrestle them to the ground, and each movie has its own complications. I will say there's like some, force behind this movie that's beyond us, in the sense that it feels like we've all just been on kind of riding a freight train. And I think that goes back to the song. It's the best-selling, most-played Christian song of all time, and it really went far beyond the faith audience and became a phenomenon. And it got to me, certainly. This song was kind of like an anthem of hope in a difficult season in our family, time of loss of an extended family member, and it's been like that for millions and millions of people. I think probably the most difficult thing for this movie was finding Bart, the kid to play Bart Millard, because we were adamant. Andy and I spent many years in the music business, directing music videos and concerts, and we were adamant that the person playing Bart needed to sing, and we didn't want to overdub it. And so we greenlit a casting process, looked at about 1,000 people all over the United States and Canada, and really couldn't find anyone. And I was in New York, working, and went to see Les Mis on Broadway. I love that show, and the music is so iconic. And the understudy to Jean Valjean there was J. Michael, and yet normally an understudy would play a role 4 or 5 times in the course of a run when someone gets sick. But the lead in the show could really only do the performance 3 or 4 times a week because of the difficulty of the vocal, and so J. Michael played Valjean 65 times on that Broadway run, and just seeing him as Valjean and these iconic songs, and I've never heard a voice like his, and yet he had this middle American grit and sensibility. Looked like Bart. Come to find out, he was a preacher's kid from Missouri that had seen Mercy Me in concert a couple times in high school, and so just a total needle in a haystack. And yet he had the best film instincts of any actor I've ever worked with. And so this is his first movie. It certainly won't be his last. And so that was amazing. And then just wanted to surround him with an ensemble cast that was amazing, starting with Dennis Quaid. And it was just a very special group of people. And it just turned out to be a very, very special movie, far more than anything else that we've worked on, in my opinion.
Yeah, and congratulations on casting J. Michael. He's really wonderful. And
he's great, yeah.
He's got that everyman appeal that you really want in a movie like this. But I want to focus a little bit on Dennis Quaid. I know it's a supporting role he's playing here, but he's so critical to the movie, the sweep, the scope, the emotional chords that are played. Talk about working with him as an actor. And here's a guy who's been around for a long time. He's done many amazing performances, but you're working with him, I assume, for the first time. Talk about what he brought to the role, and was there something about his performance that kind of surprised you?
Oh, it was like having Michael Jordan on the set. I mean, it elevated everyone's game, and I've always loved Dennis's work and the movies that he's been in, and he's kind of that all-American, iconic actor. And with this, the whole story rests upon this relationship between a father and a son. And I remember Bart had me hooked when he said, I watched my dad change from a monster to become the man I wanted to become and my best friend, and their relationship completely reconciled. And that's what birthed this song. And so many of us that are fans know it as a song about heaven. What we don't know is it's a son singing for his father. And, that was a very powerful theme. And so finding the right dad was so crucial to getting this up and running. And what people may not know about independent film, and what's one of the scarier things about independent film, is really it's very difficult to get an actor to commit to something, an actor of that caliber, that's 3 months away or 4 months away, because they'll want to hold that space out for a TV series or a studio film. But if they're available next week and the project is right, they'll say yes. So you really have to be in production, and that's the way it was with John Voight and Woodlawn, and certainly with Dennis Quaid. So we backloaded the schedule, and everything with Arthur was in that last week and a half of the schedule. And even though we shot the film in 6 weeks, it was a lightning fast production. And I vividly remember Kevin Downs, my partner and producer, kind of came running out with his cell phone right about week 3 and said, we got Quaid, and he gives something unique in his body of work. I mean, it's just, I remember him saying, I've never played transformation on film like this before. I've never taken a character from this far down to this kind of, this far up. He just had never played that kind of arc, and to watch him, I just find his performance mesmerizing in the film and really unique in his body of work. And there's this wonderful scene where, the film just stops. It's just, there's no music, there's no camera trickery. It's just Dennis and J. Michael going at it as actors. It's just it's the performances and the words on the page, and it holds you. And it's as he's trying to apologize to his son and seek forgiveness as best he can, and Bart is wrestling with his decision to forgive. And so it's just a very special performance, and he's a great guy to work with. He's truly a very kind of has a blue collar work ethic, great collaborator, Texas roots, just an all around great guy, and has become a great friend through this process.
Wow! And just a quick note: what I love about the film is that transformation is not easy. It's not smooth. It's not a you flick a switch and he's a new man. It's a very gradual, bumpy, arduous shift, and I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's so successful. I want to talk about
thank you.
The real Bart is obviously worked with the project and collaborated with you to a certain extent. Talk about getting that story and getting him right, while also being a filmmaker who has a story to tell. And there's always things you have to do to make something more compelling, and maybe you drift off the real story. Just as a filmmaker, talk about that, because that's not easy.
That's the tension of a film. And I really, some words that really helped me out were from Aaron Sorkin, the great writer. And he said, when you do an adaptation of a true story, you're not taking a photograph, you're painting a portrait, and you want that portrait to be really accurate. Mm-hmm. And so typically, a film involves compression and composite characters, and you're trying to get 2 decades into 90 minutes or 2 hours, and you're really, things that might have taken place over the course of 2 or 3 years, you have to shorten, but everything in the film happened. And I think one of the best the best review we ever got of the script was from Bart when the film had been in development. There had been some other scripts, and we became interested in the project. He brought it to Andy, and because they were friends, and said, "Would you take a look?" And we just fell in love with the story and had a very different take on the story. And he hadn't read the other scripts, and when we finally delivered our script, he actually read it in his driveway, cover to cover. And instead of going inside, he drove to his manager's house. Scott Brickle, who's played by Trace Adkins in the film, read it out loud to Trace, then drove home and read it to Shannon, his wife, who's played by Madeline Carroll in the film, out loud again. And I think that's where we knew we had a real synergy of vision. And he's such a great guy. I mean, he's like the Tom Hanks of Christian music. He's like the everyman that everyone in Christian music really loves and roots for. And he's always been kind of the underdog, and he's just a great collaborator. In many cases, he was the first viewer of the film. He was at the monitor for most of the shoot, and it was therapeutic for him. There's a scene, where there's this huge argument, and then Dennis smashes a plate over J. Michael's head, which happened, but we linger on Dennis, and J. Michael storms out of the room, and it was an improv moment, but Dennis kind of has this incredible moment of shame and oh man, I've done it again, kind of as he sinks, kind of puts his hands on his knees, and Bart's weeping at the monitor because he never thought about what it was like for his dad in those moments, and what the other side of the equation was. And so there was some sense of therapy in him being there, and we wanted to get it right, and yet it is an adaptation, and you have to do the movie version. But it's accurate, to what happened and to the story.
This is the fourth film you've made with your brother Andy, and besides the fact that my brother and I would kill each other if we ever made this kind of project, talk about how the working relationship has evolved over that. I mean, obviously, you grow as a filmmaker from one film to the next, but now you're working with your brother, you're hand in hand. What is different about the way you work together today than maybe a few years ago when you first started out?
That's a great idea. I mean, Andy and I have been working together since I was 12 and he was 15, and our kind of journey into the industry. We worked at a cable station when I was 12, and then I lied about my age to work for ESPN when I was 15 as a cameraman because somebody got sick on an ESPN football crew. I'm not recommending that anyone do that. It's just what happened, and so And my dad bought us a camera the next year when I was 16 and helped us get a loan for $10,000 for one of the first Apple computer editing systems. And that was the beginning of what we called a hobby that went out of control. I'm not recommending that 16-year-olds get $10,000 loans either. I'm not recommending any of this, but at any rate, we've had the privilege of Malcolm Gladwell calls it the 10,000 hour rule. We had the privilege of a lot of practice on short form music videos and commercials and promotional films and documentaries, and really I just feel like film is much more of a craft than it is an art. And not to say it doesn't involve art, it's the symphony of art. That's what makes it so powerful. It's all these different forms of art combined, but it really is a craft that you learn over a long period of time in small increments. And we were given the gift to begin that journey very early and begin that journey together. And what it fostered is this environment that I think is awesome. And it's basically an environment where collaboration is kind of king. And we have this thing that we say, best idea wins. And I think as Andy and I are working out those ideas, it fosters an environment where people feel like their voices are heard. People feel like they can contribute. Actors love it. And like Dennis Quaid. And, we come from live television. So it fosters an atmosphere where it's like, let's discover the moment. Let's not come in with a preconceived thing. Let's find it. And so we have this wide-eyed sense of discovery as we hit a set, and we're working it out. And I think I just feel like this is a collaborative medium, and the best idea can come from an intern or, somebody in craft service. I mean, it's all about that best idea winning. Mm-hmm. And I think when you have a vision for something, it actually enables you to listen a lot better. I think people get that wrong. I think people think that having a really strong vision means that you don't listen to anybody. No, having a really strong vision means that you can field a lot of ideas because very quickly whether they fit within your vision or not. And the vision for this was, I remember vividly talking to Bart and saying, what in the world is the phenomenon of this song? Why would an independent Christian band from Texas write the best-selling, most played Christian song of all time, and then one that would become the most requested song on many top 40 stations and country and pop charts? It's just a total anomaly. What do people feel when they hear this song? And he said it's a rush of hope. And Scott Brickell said the same thing. Shannon said the same thing. It's just this rush of hope when you need it. And so we went with that. And that was kind of like the idea, the unifying concept is we want people to feel that same rush of hope when they see the movie that they did when they heard the song. And I think that's what the story delivers, because it's this incredible story of redemption and transformation, and that no one is beyond forgiveness, and even when that forgiveness is tough and painful and takes a lot of courage, it's still possible. So that was vision, and so you're able to kind of process a lot of people's ideas within that overall concept.
We're talking with Jon Erwin, the co-director of the inspiring new drama I Can Only Imagine, in theaters now. And you kind of comically referenced some of your early days with your brother at ESPN and some of the sleights of hand that made it happen. But was that your game plan all along, that you would be making feature films, or was it something that you discovered sort of midway through the tech process and thought, hey, I enjoy doing this, but by golly, we could do that? That's a great question, actually. No, there was really no plan. For many years, it was just the Indiana Jones plan of, I don't know, I'm making this up as I go, and so really, all I knew when I was 15 is that I found something I really loved. I just fell in love. Like a kid that joined the circus, it was just there's an adrenaline to live television, and that camera could zoom. These big sports cameras are huge, and they're much larger than any camera I had worked on previously, and they're like telescopes, so you could zoom into a quarter of the moon. And so I'm this 15-year-old kid zooming in and out of the moon, and thinking this is the coolest thing I've ever done. And then they paid me $300, which was the most money I had ever seen up until that time. And so I was just hooked and having a blast. And then just, got a camera, got an editing system, and started making videos. We started working for a youth camp up in New York and doing videos. And I didn't know what I was doing or what the purpose of it was. I just knew that I loved it. And I think to any film student or young person out there, it's okay to stay there for a while and just explore your passion, even if you don't have some grand purpose behind it. And it really, Michael W. Smith and Amy Grant, two people that actually helped launch BART. And the song I Can Only Imagine launched Andy and I's music video career. Smitty was first, and we started doing just video after video, one video of the year 3 years in a row, and had about a dozen nominations. And then I went to direct Second Unit on a film called Courageous, a Christian movie, and it's a real Cinderella story. There's a church in Georgia that makes those movies called Sherwood Baptist, and they wanted to do kind of a police drama. And at the time, they made movies primarily with church volunteers, like 1,000 church volunteers. Well, you never want to combine like action sequences involving cars with church volunteers. People can get run over and die. So it was my job to take a smaller group of professionals and really get inside Alex's head, understand what he wanted to do, and go execute those sequences, which I love doing. And he asked me a very profound question, which everyone, regardless of your belief, should ask. And it was, he said, John, what's your purpose and the purpose of your work? And that question lodged deeply inside my brain because I couldn't answer it. Not only could I not answer it, I couldn't stop thinking about it. So that was my kind of career to calling moment where I realized that, hey, I had been given a gift and I had been able to really kind of hone a craft up to a point, and I could use that gift for a purpose beyond myself. And I would just say professionally, you'll never be happier in life is when you can find what your unique ability is and your gift, and you use it for some higher purpose than yourself. And for me, that's to tell stories that are entertaining, that are emotionally relatable, but that uplift and inspire and are filled with redemption and kind of pull people up to who they aspire to be rather than drag them down. And ultimately, I love showcasing the values and core principles of Christianity, which, by the way, I think when they're correctly presented, they're universally appealing. I mean, things like forgiveness and hope and redemption,
we need these things. You know, we need hope like we need air. You know, and so that's kind of my journey, and when we kind of found that a higher purpose to what we do.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems to be working out pretty well so far, so I'm glad that detour happened. I want to talk a little bit about faith-based movies in 2018. There are some people within the community who say, you know, I don't even like the label faith-based because, you know, most people are Christians or believe in God or have a spiritual life, and then maybe that sort of puts others off, or maybe the label doesn't really work. And other people say we need like a grittier, harder brand of Christian storytelling. And I was curious, your perspective. I mean, your films are cleaner for sure, but where do you think that the genre itself is moving? It seems like it's grown a lot in the last 5 years.
You have touched on the question in Christian entertainment, and I love the label and category in the sense that it's like it's a frontier. You know, Sean Astin said on Woodlawn, he said, "I see you and Andy as frontiersmen and pioneers." And I said, "Thanks, Sean. That's exactly what we want to blaze a trail for that generation of talent that's going to far exceed our abilities." And he said, "You know, John, most frontiersmen die out on the frontier." And I'm like, "Well, I never thought of that." But the trail will be clearly marked, and we'll be frozen pointing to the summit. You know, on the other hand, I think we do a great disservice by putting one big label on this, whatever this is that's emerging, and in Christian, you know, faith-based entertainment. And I dream of a day where the quality can go up, and we're certainly trying to drive the quality up, and also it can just blossom with diversity. You know, like almost like a tree trunk that then grows out into its branches. And I see that happening somewhat in Christian music. You know, if you think about two of the people that are represented in the film, Michael W. Smith and Amy Grant, and you think about where Christian music was when they started, it was very much where Christian film is today. And I think it's kind of flourished into a platform that now allows a lot of young talent to have their voices heard, and has great diversity. There's a lot of different kinds of Christian music. It's not all one thing. And so I dream of it's not a genre. Christian film is a category, and it's an audience. It's an underserved audience. And Christian film, I wish Christians would just start thinking about film as an opportunity. Film is an opportunity to share our value system with the world. And I think the world needs our value system. And by the way, this is America's second largest export. And there's 20 movie theaters opening every day in China. And so this is a way to get a value system that's meaningful to the world if you tell the right story. I remember Pastor T.D. Jakes, I remember hearing him say, you know, Jesus was a storyteller, so if he's around today, he'd be a filmmaker. I don't know if that's accurate, but I think that's interesting. This is a new and powerful way to do a very old thing, which is to tell stories. If you read Poetics by Aristotle, you think you're reading some course on screenwriting. I mean, that's how old the craft of what we do is, and I think, you know, I consider Jesus to be the greatest storyteller of all time, and so just emotionally relatable, incredibly dramatic, incredibly entertaining stories he told. And so I think that if we could think about it differently and begin to I understand the cynicism is earned because some of the product has been really bad and frequent, but we can change that, you know. And I think we're not really mad at Christian films being bad. We're mad at first-time filmmakers making a low-budget film. You know, those are typically pretty rough. I tell people James Cameron's first film was not Avatar or Titanic. It was Piranha 2, The Spawning. It's terrible, you know, and yet you can see James Cameron's genius in there a little bit. And so I just think we haven't introduced a kind of a compounding mechanism where there can be growth and a talent factory where talent can be incubated and empowered and launched. And I dream of some of those things, and I dream of fully establishing the genre, but I'm committed to rolling up, and everybody's different. I mean, you know, Scott Derrickson is a Christian out and directing amazing movies that have seen enormous success, and that's what, you know, God's called him to. What I feel like I'm supposed to do is I just love pioneering stuff, and I just think this emerging thing called Christian film is in its infancy, and there's so few people that get to define an industry, and I love being one of those people, and to blaze a trail with this. And I think we've only just begun to experience what the potential of these films could be. and what their quality could be and how much we could spend on them and their reach worldwide. And I hope that I Can Only Imagine is a step forward in that process.
Well, even if you didn't like the film, and I find that a little bit challenging because it's such an enjoyable process, but it's a gorgeous film. It looks beautiful, and I think you guys are clearly blazing that particular trail, because this is just from a visual point of view, it's wonderful. But Jon,
got a great team. Got a great team of people.
Well, it all worked together. But thanks again, Jon, for joining the HiTcast. You can please see I Can Only Imagine in theaters now. And if you're hungry for a heartfelt drama with spiritual heft, I highly recommend it. Jon, thanks so much, and all the best.
Thanks. Great conversation, and I look forward to the next one.
Well, thanks again for listening. Don't forget to check out HollywoodandToto.com for both the show notes and, of course, the latest entertainment news. Please follow me at Twitter at HollywoodandToto. And we'd love it if you leave a podcast review over at iTunes. See you next week.